Moo. June yelps in surprise, feeling a hand grab the back of her hoodie before yanking her backwards. The force was enough to send her off her feet. Fortunately, Dune was there. You have to be careful, Junestier. After making sure his sister was steady on her feet, he checked her for any injuries. Granted, the speeder never touched her, but it was safe than sorry. I am fine, I just got distracted from the pretty lights. June points and her finger aims toward the fireworks in the sky. They were most definitely dazzling, to say the least. The colors were unlike anything she had seen before outside of her home. Of course, she didn't know that the reason for the light show in this case was the celebration of the Bondani arriving on the planet over 200 to 300 years ago. Not that it would be something that Gran would have taught her willingly. She was young, around 7 years of age, and despite that, she had already seen and done things that no child of her age should be forced to endure. Even with knowing that Gran still wanted to preserve as much innocence as she could. Dune nods, hiding how he felt upon being forced to regain that knowledge himself. It wasn't something he wanted on his mind, especially now, but that choice, like their lives were taken away. Are you guys ready? Dune turns his head to see Eve, or E for short. A young teenage girl around his age with a form that was highly sought after by most Nijan girls, especially the ones who had practically no meat on them at all. E was a luxuriant girl with eyes nearly as brown as his skin. Her face was effortless despite all the muck and dirt as well as trash they had to go through every single day. A pair of black glasses rested upon her face, covered in cracks and dirt. Her outfit, like his, consisted of the color black with a shirt that was painted with the image of a small blade. An item that she both favored and carried around with her at all times. Of course, she wasn't alone in that aspect, but she was the type to carry extras with extras as backup. Where exactly she hides them is another question that only Dune knows. Yeah, we should be good, hopefully no dumb shit happens today like last time. He was referencing how the duo almost got caught because someone, in particular, tried to do more than what they came for in hopes of making a lasting profit. I said I was sorry. Gio was another member of the group. Dark-skinned, short, messy hair, plain-colored clothes, and someone who tended to act first without thinking. She means well, and 9 out of 10 her actions are for the good of the group, but at the same time she has a go all in or nothing mentality. This means if she sees something of value or thinks that an action would lead to help them in the long run, she's hard-pressed to not follow through. Just don't fuck us this time, Eve smirks, but her gaze is stern as she stares at her longtime friend. I thought y'all were due. Not in front of June, Dune interrupts. However, this caused the young gaze girl to roll her eyes. I'm gaze, not retarded. Eve smiles, ruffling up her hair in response. This is why you are my favorite. Dune rolls his eyes, looking around. The place they were at didn't have a lot of people around. Which was good, because the fewer people around the better. Especially when it comes to their line of work. A maroon is essentially a modern-day prison, if not several times worse. You see, Nijens aren't just stuck in a bubble and left alone. No, the point of a maroon, the very function of its creation, is to either depopulate or lower the population of the natural inhabitants. The appearance of a maroon is more of a greenish-black crystallized dome, with black-looking metallic spheres rooted to the ground. The dorm itself isn't inescapable. It was never built to keep people in. Rather, the dorm itself constantly creates and emits a toxin-like gas that is so potent it can kill a blue whale in as little as 15 minutes. When it was first created, it was more so in hopes of killing off an incredibly tough invasive species on their home planet. However, after their planet began to destabilize, the scientists began to make tweaks. Now, as you can imagine, this type of biological weapon, when introduced, killed millions of the Nigran. In a short period, over half of the population was wiped out and or grew sick, spreading disease and making their population even smaller. However, the Nijin refused to die. This is because, unlike you and me, they have a vastly unique immune system. You see, this isn't the first time they faced the possibility of being wiped out. Several thousand before the invasion, an asteroid hit the planet. From that asteroid was a plague so severe and widespread that it killed off 70% of the population. The ones that were left over and/or survived began to develop antibodies that not only fought off the disease but made them completely immune to it. This immunity is passed down from generation to generation and is still present with them today even though the plague had long since died out. This adaptive immunity is a natural defense that the Nigerian people were blessed with, unlike the Bandani who despite having better technology, medicine, and other abilities that are rare are still inferior in that regard. Even with their natural immunity the Maroon still keeps them at bay now because of the Dorm, but what awaits behind it? Blessings. That is the name that is used to describe Bandani who were born with abilities that far exceed what was originally thought to be possible. These powers these abilities are seen in Bandani society by their god Gwao. To them, it is a sign of a higher purpose that they were chosen to rule and make their world better by their will. Blessings are powerful, so powerful that merely one can conquer or destroy an entire planet 12 times the size of Jupiter. One is so fast that it can travel to the sun and back in seconds. Of course, these are just mere rumors in Nigerian society but none can prove otherwise. Remember the black metal spheres. They're not spheres. They're sensors. And whoever tries to leave will have their organs ripped out in an instant. No one knows how or why, but some can only assume that it is a blessing waiting in the shadows tasked with killing anyone who tries to leave. However, there are ways. Ways that Dune and the rest figured out a long time ago. Toger the trio opens a hid. Dune glanced at Geo, a mix of concern and frustration evident on his face. Geo, we can't afford any mistakes today. This job is important, and we need to make sure we execute it flawlessly. Geo's shoulders slumped slightly, her energetic demeanor deflating. I know, I messed up last time. But I promise, this time I'll be more careful. Dune let out a sigh, not entirely convinced. He knew Geo's impulsiveness and her knack for getting into trouble too well. But they were a team, and they relied on each other to survive. He couldn't abandon her now. All right, Dune relented, his voice firm. But remember, we need to stick to the plan. No taking unnecessary risks. Eve chimed in, her tone serious. And no getting distracted by pretty lights, June. June sheepishly looked down, her cheeks flushing. I promise, I'll be focused. The group continued moving through the shadows, making their way toward the target house. The streets were eerily quiet, the celebratory sounds of the Bandani festival fading into the distance. Their mission tonight was to retrieve an artifact that a lot of people were interested in. It was said to be hidden within the Bandani vault, well guarded and heavily protected. As they approached the house, Dune huddled them together to discuss the plan. All right, we'll stick to our roles. Geo, you'll disable the security system. June, you'll keep a lookout. You and I will handle the vault lock. Geo nodded eagerly, determined to redeem herself. I won't mess it up this time, I promise. Dune gave her an encouraging smile. I know you won't, Geo. Just remember to stay focused. The group split up, each member moving silently towards their assigned tasks. June found herself perched on a nearby rooftop, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of trouble. The night air felt electric, anticipation coursing through her veins. Just as she was about to lose herself in the beauty of the starlit sky, a flicker of movement caught her attention. She focused her gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. A figure emerged from the shadows, their footsteps barely audible. It was a Bandani guard, their uniform gleaming in the moonlight. June knew instantly that they were up against more than just security systems. She quickly glanced around, trying to spot her teammates. Fear gripped her as she realized they were nowhere in sight. The mission had taken an unexpected turn, and they were about to face a formidable foe alone. June took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She had to warn her friends and regroup. With newfound determination, she carefully made her way back down the rooftop, her mind racing with thoughts of how they could overcome this unexpected obstacle. June's heart pounded in her chest as her pursuer closed in. With adrenaline surging through her veins, she leapt from one rooftop to another, deftly maneuvering through the labyrinthine cityscape. Her agile movements allowed her to gain distance from the approaching guard, but she knew it wouldn't be long before their reinforcements arrived. As June darted between buildings, she frantically searched for a vantage point to signal her team. Spotting a towering communications tower nearby, she made a split-second decision. Calculating the risks, she sprinted toward it, a surge of determination fueling her every step. With a burst of energy, June leapt onto the ladder leading up the tower. Her muscles strained as she climbed, the metallic rungs cutting into her hands. Finally, she reached the top platform, a panoramic view of the city sprawled out before her. Taking a moment to catch her breath, June reached for her comms device. She keyed in the emergency frequency and sent a distress signal to Dune and the others. Dune, Geo, we've got company. I need backup. June's voice trembled with urgency. Dune's response crackled through the comms. June, hold on. We're on our way. Just stay put. But June knew she couldn't stay put for long. The guard was closing in, their silhouette growing larger against the dimly lit streets below. She had to think fast. Drawing on her resourcefulness, June spotted a zip line connecting two buildings a few meters away. With no time to spare, she took a leap of faith, hurtling through the air and grabbing hold of the cable. Adrenaline surged through her as gravity carried her swiftly toward the opposite building. Landing with agility and barely breaking stride, June continued her daring escape. She slipped through narrow alleyways, ducking into doorways and blending into the shadows. It was a dangerous game of cat and mouse, but June relied on her training and instincts to stay one step ahead. Finally, as she rounded a corner, she saw the familiar figures of Dune, Geo, and Eve in the distance. Relief flooded over her as she sprinted toward them, her teammates forming a protective circle. We've got your back, June, Dune declared, a glimmer of pride in his eyes for her resourcefulness. June smiles, her earlier fears dissipating. That was scary. Geo grins, relief shining in her eyes. I am just glad we managed to grab it in time. Now let's get the fuck out of here. With renewed resolve, the team regrouped and headed back the way they came. As he entered the ring, the crowd's anticipation swelled. She had always possessed a ferocious fighting spirit, but this was different. This was her chance to prove herself, to show her worth in a world where strength dictated survival. The opponent stood on the other side of the ring, a formidable figure with a hardened expression. Eve squared her shoulders, her mind focused and her senses sharp. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, heightening her awareness and sharpening her reflexes. The bell rang, signaling the start of the match, and Eve's body moved with a fluidity born from years of training. She dodged and weaved, her every movement calculated with precision. The crowd erupted in excitement as each blow she landed proved her skill and determination. With the crisp sound of impact reverberating through the air, Eve unleashed a series of swift, powerful strikes. Her fists connected with her opponent's body, each hit propelling her one step closer to victory. She could taste the adrenaline on her lips as she danced nimbly around her challenger. But Eve knew the fight was far from over. Her opponent, fueled by pride and a will to survive, retaliated with equal fervor. The two engaged in a fierce, relentless showdown as the crowd's cheers reached a crescendo. Time seemed to blur, the moments blending into an intense, intoxicating mixture of sweat, blood, and determination. Eve pushed herself to the limits of her physical and mental strength, refusing to back down even when her body screamed for respite. And then, in a final moment of calculated instinct, Eve seized her opportunity. With a powerful punch, she aimed for her opponent's vulnerable spot. The resounding impact filled the arena as her rival crumpled to the ground, defeated. The crowd erupted into a thunderous roar, their applause filling Eve's ears. She stood in the center of the ring, chest heaving, a victorious smile breaking across her face. It was a dangerous and exhilarating journey, but she had emerged triumphant. Hearing people call out her name, Eve turns annoyed to see the ones she considers her family giving her cheers and a thumbs up. She smiles before walking over, taking the cash that she was owed. It wasn't much, but at least they'll go a few days without being hungry. Dune sighs, knowing that a good day without any mishaps or fuck-ups was a rarity in their line of work. But he couldn't deny that they all needed a break from the constant danger and uncertainty that came with their current lifestyle. All right, let's head to the roof. But Geo, please try to keep your impulses in check today. We've had enough close calls as it is, Dune says, giving Geo a knowing look. Geo shrugs, crossing her arms defiantly. No promises, Dune. I can't help it if opportunities come knocking. I'm just quick to answer. June chimes in, her voice filled with excitement. But today is different, right? We're going to watch the fireworks and have some fun for once. Dune nods, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Yes, June. Today is about enjoying ourselves and forgetting about our troubles, even if it's just for a little while. With that, the group makes their way through the abandoned building they call home. The stairwell is dimly lit, debris scattered across the steps, but they navigate it with ease, their familiarity with the building evident. Once they reach the roof, they're greeted by a breathtaking view of the city skyline. The distant hum of celebrations fills the air, and colorful bursts of fireworks light up the night sky. It's a stark contrast to their usual surroundings, a momentary reprieve from the harsh reality they face every day. Eve finds a comfortable spot near the edge of the rooftop, carefully keeping her balance with one foot resting on the ledge. The others join her, sitting down and leaning against the ledge, their eyes fixated on the fireworks. As they watch the spectacular display of lights and colors, a sense of peace settles over the group. In this moment, they forget about the dangers, about their uncertain future, and simply enjoy the beauty unfolding before them. Geo leans back, letting out a contented sigh. You know, I could get used to this. Dune chuckles, glancing at his companions. Yeah, it's nice to have a moment of peace, isn't it? June nods, her eyes sparkling with childlike wonder. It's like the fireworks are painting the sky just for us. As the last firework fades away, the group remains on the rooftop, basking in the afterglow. For a brief moment, their worries and hardships fade into the background, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and hope. They may be living in a harsh world, but they know that as long as they have each other, they can face whatever challenges come their way. And right now, they'll hold on to this moment of tranquility, knowing that it will fuel their determination to keep fighting for a better future. Together, they find solace in the simple act of watching fireworks on a rooftop, cherishing the moments of respite they so rarely get to experience. After a bit, the trio decides to head to sleep with Dune the last one to go. But unfortunately for him, it wasn't pleasant. Dune's peaceful slumber is abruptly interrupted by haunting images and jumbled sensations. He finds himself standing in the middle of a fiery battlefield, surrounded by chaos and destruction. The distant screams of agony pierce his ears, and the acrid smell of smoke fills his nostrils. In the distance, he sees his parents, engulfed in flame and desperately reaching out for him. Their anguished cries echo in his mind, fueling a surge of helplessness and despair within him. He tries to run towards them, but his legs feel heavy, as if weighed down by an invisible force. No, Dune shouts, his voice drowned out by the chaos around him. Tears well up in his eyes as he watches his parents disappear into the inferno, their faces etched with pain and fear. The guilt of not being able to save them engulfs him, consuming his thoughts and emotions. Suddenly, Dune jolts awake, gasping for air. For a moment, he struggles to separate the nightmare from reality. It takes a few deep breaths and the familiar surroundings of their makeshift home for him to regain his composure. He glances around, finding Geo and June still sleeping peacefully nearby. Dune knows that he can't go back to sleep, not with the vivid images of his parents' demise haunting him. He quietly leaves the rooftop, making his way to the fire escape. The night air is cool and refreshing against Dune's skin as he sits on the rusted steps, trying to calm his racing heart. He takes in the quiet cityscape, the distant sounds of celebration now a distant memory. In the solitude of the night, Dune allows himself to grieve, to confront the pain that he carries deep within him. He remembers his parents' love, their unwavering support, and the void they left behind when they were taken from him. The weight of their loss feels heavier than ever in this moment. As Dune sits there, the night slowly gives way to the gentle light of dawn. The first rays of sunlight pierce through the skyline, casting a warm glow upon the city. A renewed sense of purpose fills Dune's heart, pushing him forward despite the pain. As the sun rises higher in the sky, bathing the city in golden hues, Dune decides it's time to return to Geo and June. He knows they'll be waking soon, and he wants to be there for them, even if he still carries the burden of his grief. As he makes his way back to their makeshift home, he can't help but notice a group of kids in the distance. They're huddled together, eyeing Dune and his companions cautiously. Dune recognizes the look in their eyes, the hunger, the desperation, and the fierce determination to survive. He approaches them cautiously, aware of the potential for conflict. These are the streets, after all, and resources are scarce. Competition for survival is a heartless game, and sometimes it turns violent. The leader of the group, a wiry young boy with a hardened expression, steps forward. "What do you want?" he asks, his voice tinged with skepticism. Dune swallows his pride and tries to diffuse the tension. "We're just passing through. We don't want any trouble," he replies, his voice calm but firm. The boy's eyes narrow, assessing Dune and his friends. After a moment, a hint of understanding flickers in his gaze. "We need this spot. It's our place to sleep," he says, his voice tinged with hostility. Dune's heart sinks. He knows all too well the harsh reality of survival on the streets. Clashes like this are inevitable, and there's no easy solution. But he believes in empathy, in finding common ground amidst adversity. He takes a step closer to the young boy, lowering his voice. "Look, we're all just kids trying to survive here. The streets are tough, but maybe we can find a way to help each other. We don't have to fight." The boy hesitates, his gaze locked with Dune's. A flicker of doubt crosses his face, a glimmer of hope that there might be another way. Just then, June and Geo join Dune, standing by his side in silent support. The air is thick with tension, but for a fleeting moment, the possibility of understanding hangs in the balance. Perhaps, just perhaps, these kids can find a way to coexist, to forge a bond in the midst of chaos. Dune holds his breath, waiting for the boy's decision. The seconds stretch into an eternity as the young boy weighs his options. Dune can see the conflict raging within him, the desire for their spot, the instinct to fight for survival, but also the glimmer of hope for a different outcome. Finally, the tension dissipates as the boy lets out a deep breath, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "Fine," he says, his voice tinged with resignation. "We can find somewhere else. But don't think we won't remember this." Dune nods, grateful for this small act of understanding. "Thank you," he replies, his voice genuine. "We'll remember too." Aware that tensions may still simmer beneath the surface, Dune extends a hand towards the young boy. "I'm Dune," he introduces himself, hoping to bridge the divide. "What's your name?" The boy hesitates for a moment before tentatively accepting the handshake. "Joey," he mutters, his voice softened somewhat. From the corner of his eye, Dune catches a glimpse of Geo and June exchanging a small smile behind him. They understand the significance of this moment. It's not just about securing their spot, it's about the seeds of peace that they've sown. As the two groups part ways, heading in different directions, Dune feels a sense of cautious optimism in his heart. Perhaps, in this harsh and broken world, there is still a glimmer of light, a chance for unity and compassion to prevail. But Dune is also aware that the streets can be merciless, and conflicts like this may arise again. They must stay vigilant, flexible, and ready to adapt to the ever-changing circumstances. Survival, after all, not every outcome will be a peaceful one. In a world where discovery and ambition collided, a brilliant scientist named Dr. Magnus Orion dedicated himself to unfathomable pursuits, opening a portal to a realm unknown. Hailing from the planet Etherealis, his origins were cloaked in advanced technologies and breathtaking landscapes. Etherealis, a realm of unparalleled splendor, glimmered with cities that seemed to float among the clouds, adorned with shimmering towers and intricate architecture that merged seamlessly with nature. Dr. Orion yearned to expand the boundaries of knowledge, driven by the insatiable thirst for the unknown. Yet, he embodied an enigmatic complexity, for on this planet Verdiani, his people were not heralded as heroes, but as conquerors. In their advanced civilization of their society, somewhat akin to the blessings bestowed upon the ancient god Guao, these blessings possessed extraordinary powers that were harnessed through unknown means. Dr. Orion, fascinated by the enigmatic powers of the blessings, sought to unravel their essence and harness it for his purpose, the opening of the portal. However, his people denied him such a request, seeing it as the highest form of madness against their god. Fortunately for him, he was given a chance to prove himself regardless by those who shared his ambition, although in secret. Regardless, he delved into the intricate cosmic alignments, energy fields, and quantum anomalies that lay at the core of his work. He envisioned a device, pulsating with a harmonious convergence of technology and spirituality, capable of amplifying and channeling the blessing's powers. It was this audacious creation that he believed could rip open the fabric of reality and pave the way to a realm uncharted. However, despite his noble intentions to expand knowledge, the dark shadow cast by his planet's conquests tainted his quest. While Dr. Orion's brilliance and pursuit of the unknown endeared him to some, to others, he stood as a reminder of the relentless ambition that had propelled Etherealis into dominance. For they knew that behind the facade of curiosity and enlightenment, lay the essence of a conqueror, craving control and dominion. As Dr. Orion meticulously crafted his portal-opening device and sought to manipulate the powers of the blessing, a silent war raged within his soul. Would he serve as a harbinger of enlightenment or succumb to the path of ruthlessness and dominance that his people had tread before him? The answer was simple. With an air of trepidation and excitement, Dr. Magnus Orion stood before the completed portal-opening device. Its intricate design, pulsating with an iridescent glow, seemed to beckon him forward into a destiny unknown. As he initiated the activation sequence, a low hum filled the room, growing in intensity with each passing moment. But as the portal's energies surged, a strange phenomenon unfolded. Dr. Orion noticed a subtle change in the atmosphere, a chilling stillness that seemed to creep through the air. His surroundings began to freeze, the once vibrant laboratory fading into an icy tableau. Everything, from the shimmering equipment to the floating orbs of light, became encased in a frozen embrace. Confusion and panic gripped Dr. Orion as he realized the repercussions of his creation. The raw power and ancient energies he had harnessed were not to be taken lightly. The delicate balance between discoveries and the lessons of the past had been disrupted. In his ambition, he had neglected the lessons of his people's conquest, the cost of unchecked desires for control. Frantically, Dr. Orion tried to reverse the process, to regain control over the unleashed energies. But his efforts were futile. The portal, now open, expanded in its frozen state, revealing a glimpse of the ethereal realm he had sought to explore. Yet, it remained trapped in an eerie stillness, its beauty marred by the frozen stasis that surrounded him. In that moment, as Dr. Orion desperately tried to close the portal, his eyes widened in terror as a being beyond comprehension emerged from the frozen void. It was a creature of unimaginable horror, its form fluid and ever-shifting, with tentacle-like appendages writhing in every direction. Its eyes, glowing with a malevolent light, stared directly into Dr. Orion's soul, filled with untold power and ancient knowledge. Dr. Orion's heart pounded in his chest as he fumbled with the controls, desperately attempting to undo the irreversible. But it was too late. With urge of energy, the portal snapped shut, sealing off the ethereal realm but leaving behind a trail of lingering dread in its wake. Unbeknownst to Dr. Orion, a small blue orb of energy had slipped through the closing portal, evading his notice. It hummed with an otherworldly energy, pulsating with an unknown purpose. As it floated silently across the laboratory, before phasing through the wall and out of sight. As Dr. Orion tried to regain his composure, still grappling with the terror of what he had witnessed, the door to his lab swung open. In walked a tall, muscular figure clad in golden yellow armor adorned with intricate symbols and sigils. It was the Blessing Witch, a legendary being blessed with extraordinary powers. With a sense of authority, the Blessing Witch assessed the situation, his piercing eyes scanning the lab and Dr. Orion's trembling form. "What transpired here, mortal?" he demanded in a deep, resonant voice that carried an air of command. The scientist struggled to find the words to describe the indescribable. I opened a portal to another realm," he stammered, his voice barely audible. "Something came through, something beyond anything I've ever seen." The Blessing Witch's gaze hardened, his expression a mix of concern and determination. "This is grave news," he said solemnly. "I must bring you before the Council of the Elders. They will determine the fate of both you and the device you used." With a wave of his hand, the Blessing Witch bound Dr. Orion in a shimmering force field, escorting him out of the lab. The council consisted of 12 Bondani elders who were selected by the people days before their planet began to collapse. Having figured out a way to save their people, these 12 are highly respected and essentially rule the government as a whole. "Scientist, you have meddled with forces beyond your understanding," spoke an elder, his voice echoing with authority. "This device, the portal you opened, has the potential to bring chaos and destruction to our world. We demand an explanation." Dr. Orion, overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation, struggled to articulate his thoughts. He described the experiments he had conducted, the calculations he had made, and the profound repercussions of his actions. The council deliberated in hushed tones, their expressions unreadable. Finally, they reached a unanimous decision. The head elder, adorned in silver robes, addressed Dr. Orion with a stern yet compassionate tone. "We shall spare you from immediate punishment, seeing that your intentions were not knowingly malevolent," one said. "But you will be closely monitored and placed under probation. As for the device, it shall be confiscated and sealed away in our safest vaults." Dr. Orion nodded, relieved to escape a more severe sentence. However, his relief was short-lived as guards escorted him to a cold, dimly lit cell. As the heavy metal door closed behind him, Dr. Orion's mind churned with thoughts of the unspeakable horror he had unintentionally unleashed upon the world. As the group walked through the bustling streets of the Bondani city, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with a tinge of resentment. The city was nothing short of magnificent, with towering buildings adorned with shimmering glass and vibrant holographic displays. The streets were immaculately clean, and the people walking by wore lavish clothing, sparkling with all types of jewelry and precious gems. Dune sighed, his eyes scanning the surroundings with a mix of disgust and envy. He couldn't help but think about the stark contrast between their own lives, spent scavenging through the wastelands for survival, and the opulence of this city. It was a bitter reminder of the inequality that existed in their world, where the rich grew richer while the poor struggled to even get by. Eve nudged Dune's arm, breaking him out of his thoughts. "Don't let it get to you, Dune. We're not here to dwell on what we don't have. We're here to secure our next job, remember?" She was right, as always. This job was their only chance to earn enough credits to live another day. Geo, ever the impulsive one, glanced at a high-end jewelry store they passed by. A mischievous smile formed on her face, and she whispered to the group, "You know, we could just snatch a couple of those sparklers and be done with it." Dune rolled his eyes. "Geo, focus. We can't afford to get sidetracked. Our priority is the mission." June tugged at Dune's sleeve, her eyes wide with wonder. "But Dune, look at all those shiny things. They're so pretty." Dune couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt as he looked at his sister. June deserved a better life, one filled with joy and security, not constant danger and scarcity. It was their shared responsibility to make that happen, no matter the sacrifices they had to make. He knelt down, his voice gentle yet firm. "June, I promise you, someday we'll be able to afford all the pretty things. But right now, we have a task at hand. It's for all of us." June nodded, her eyes welling up with determination. "Okay, Dune, I understand. Let's do this." The group made their way to the target location, a luxurious mansion nestled among the affluent residential area of the city. Towering walls surrounded the property, adorned with elaborate ironwork and guarded by sophisticated security systems. It was clear that gaining entry would prove to be an arduous task. Dune paced back and forth, his mind racing with different strategies. All right, we need a plan. Geo, what do you have in mind? Geo raised an eyebrow, a mischievous glimmer in her eyes. I say we go in through the rooftop. It's always less guarded, and we can avoid the front entrance altogether. Plus, it'll keep us closer to the target room. Eve nodded in agreement. Geo's right. The rooftop is our best bet. We need to locate any entry points and assess the security systems along the way. June piped up, her voice filled with uncertainty. But what if we get hurt? Dune knelt down once more, placing a reassuring hand on his sister's shoulder. We've been through worse, June. We have each other's backs, and we'll do everything we can to minimize the risks. Trust me, we're going to pull this off. June looks at the trio still hesitant but nods knowing that they can't just go back. With their plan in place, the group set out to execute their mission with precision and grace. Under the cover of darkness, Dune and Geo swiftly scaled the walls of the mansion, using their expert climbing skills to navigate the treacherous ironwork. They reached the rooftop undetected, thanks to their careful reconnaissance and knowledge of the layout. Eve and June remained on the ground, keeping a lookout for any signs of trouble. Eve monitored the security cameras, relaying any pertinent information to Dune and Geo through their discrete communication devices. Dune and Geo carefully moved from rooftop to rooftop, maintaining their stealth as they approached the target room. Their hearts raced in anticipation, knowing that one wrong move could mean disaster. Reaching the designated window, Dune carefully picked the lock, his nimble fingers working swiftly. The lock clicked open, allowing them access to the luxurious bedroom beyond. Inside, the room was adorned with opulent furniture, exquisite artwork, and shelves lined with precious artifacts. The air was heavy with the scent of wealth and luxury. Geo quickly surveyed the room, her eyes scanning for the most valuable items. With practiced efficiency, she selected the most valuable pieces, carefully wrapping them in soft cloth and placing them in her bag. Suddenly both kids felt an unexplained chill go up their spine as this happens. A glowing blue orb appears before them. Startled by the sudden appearance of the blue orb and the blaring alarms, Dune and Geo frantically exchanged glances, their hearts pounding in their chests. Eve, what's going on? Dune urgently whispered into his communication device, hoping for some answers. Eve's voice crackled through the earpiece, filled with concern. I don't know, Dune. Something triggered the alarms. You need to wrap up the mission and get out of there. As Dune and Geo exchanged bewildered glances, the blue orb began to fade, its ethereal glow merging and dispersing into Dune's body. His eyes widened in shock and he felt a surge of energy coursing through his veins. What just happened? Dune gasped, his voice filled with both wonder and trepidation. Geo, momentarily stunned by the sight, quickly snapped back to reality. No time to ponder that now, Dune. We need to go before things get worse. Nodding in agreement, Dune and Geo swiftly made their way through the abandoned warehouse towards the exit. The blaring alarms acted as a chaotic symphony, driving their adrenaline-fueled escape. Reaching the main entrance, they found their exit blocked by a group of armed guards, their weapons aimed directly at them. With a quick exchange of glances, they both knew they had no choice but to seek an alternative escape route. Geo, always quick on her feet, motioned Dune to follow him as they sprinted towards an old fire escape. Clambering up the metal staircase, they ascended to the rooftop, their muscles straining against the effort. The city skyline stretched before them, a maze of towering buildings that offered the only means of survival. Ignoring the height and the danger, they had no option but to traverse the rooftops, their lives hanging in the balance. Balancing precariously, they leapt from one rooftop to another, their movements guided by instinct and nerves of steel. Each step was calculated, their bodies pushed to the limit as they evaded their pursuers. Despite the adrenaline that surged through their veins, fear sat heavy in their chests. The guards were relentless, following closely behind, their shouts echoing through the city streets. Dune's mind raced with questions about the mysterious orb, but survival took precedence for now. With every leap, every deft movement, the gap between them and their pursuers widened. The city beneath them blurred as they continued their daring escape. Breathless and driven by sheer willpower, they pushed forward until they reached a secluded rooftop. Collapsing to the ground, their lungs burning for air, Dune and Geo realized they had lost their pursuers, at least for now. Beads of sweat trickled down their foreheads, mingling with the grime of their desperate escape. Geo looked at Dune, a mix of concern and curiosity in her eyes. What the hell just happened with that orb, man? You absorbed it. Dune took a moment to catch his breath before responding, his voice filled with uncertainty. I don't know, Geo. It was like, it merged with me. I felt a surge of power, but I can't explain it. Geo's eyes narrowed, her mind working overtime. Whatever it was, it saved our skins back there. But we're not out of danger yet. We need to find shelter, lay low, and figure out what to do next. Dune nods, looking around hoping to see the others. Just as Dune began to catch his breath, a soft glow emanated from the rooftop, catching both their attention. They turned towards the source, their eyes widening in astonishment. Standing before them was a figure straight out of their worst nightmares. A blessing. The figure stood tall and imposing, his form cloaked in shadows. His features were obscured by a menacing hood, and his eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity. Every muscle in Dune's body tensed as he felt an overwhelming presence emanating from the figure. A hush fell over the air, as if nature itself held its breath, afraid to disturb the power that emanated from the enigmatic figure. Dune could feel the weight of his own insignificance, a realization that he was standing before a being far beyond mortal comprehension. The figure slowly stepped forward, his footsteps echoing with an unnatural resonance. The ground trembled beneath his feet, causing cracks to form in the earth. As he moved closer, Dune could barely make out the sharp contours of his face, a visage twisted with ancient wisdom and unspeakable power. Black, ethereal tendrils snaked around the figure, pulsating with an eerie energy. Dune felt a chill running down his spine, instinctively realizing that this was no mere mortal standing before him. This was a blessing, a being chosen by the gods themselves to enforce the laws of their people. The air grew heavier, suffocating Dune's lungs with the weight of 1,000 secrets. Shadows danced around the figure, their movements fluid and mesmerizing. With every step, the figure seemed to conjure a dark vortex, drawing in the very essence of the surrounding world. Dune's heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to find his voice. Who are you? He managed to stammer. The figure paused, his piercing gaze fixed upon Dune as if peering into his very soul. His voice echoed through the air, a low, rumbling sound that resonated with an ancient power. I am known as Acheron, he answered, each syllable sending shivers down Dune's spine. Dune tried to steady himself, summoning his courage. Why have you come here, Acheron? The great hall of the Bandani vibrated with a charged atmosphere. A group of grieving Bandani warriors gathered together, their faces etched with sorrow and anger. The loss of their friend, Errol, weighed heavily on their hearts. They had believed their exceptional abilities were all-powerful, but now they faced the bitter reality of defeat at the hands of the Nijin. In the center of the chamber stood Davian, a towering figure known for his strength and leadership.